Discover the amazing transformation. A U.S. Marine finds a freezing baby's hidden voice. Mama? Mark Thompson gripped the steering wheel of his pickup, the icy roads reflecting the bitterness of his return. The town was cloaked in a heavy snowfall, each flake landing like another weight on his chest. The familiar streets, once alive with laughter and warmth, now felt like a distant memory. Just weeks ago, he had bravely faced the chaos of battle, and now he was a stranger in his own home. He could hardly shake the echoes of gunfire and desperate cries. The agonizing solitude cut deep. Each empty house felt like a reminder of the camaraderie he lost overseas. As he drove to the outskirts, an urgent call from the local authorities pierced the stillness of the night. An emergency rescue at the old factory loomed ahead like a ghost from his past, part of his history that felt just as hollow as his own. Reluctance gripped him. Should he go? What could he possibly offer when he himself felt so shattered? His breath quickened as he forced himself to turn the truck around, his heart heavy with the burden of responsibility. Inside the factory, shadows clung to his every move. The air was thick with despair, much like the turmoil roiling within him. Loss and confusion were his constant companions. As his flashlight swept across the debris of forgotten dreams, he paused, drawn by a faint sound, little more than a whimper. A quickening in his pulse urged him onward. The anguish he felt for the child echoed the grief of returning home, where he felt just as abandoned as this baby. Mama! The desperate plea sliced through the air, shattering his frozen resolve. His heart surged. This wasn't just a mission anymore. It was personal. This baby represented everything he fought for: innocence, hope, family. But he wrestled internally, guilt and determination locking horns. Could he be the savior this child needed when he felt so broken himself? Questions swirled. Would he have to confront the town's judgment, its hypocrisy? Mark steadied his breathing, feeling the tightness in his chest, like a soldier before battle. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Mark crouched next to the makeshift room, the echoes of his own fears thrumming through him. He longed to cradle the tiny human, to soothe her with the warmth he wished he still felt. Each moment grew heavier. What if he couldn't find the baby's mother? What if he couldn't navigate the mess of lives tangled around this child? He thought of the whispers he would face, the prejudices he'd encounter. And yet, the thought of walking away seemed impossible. His resolve crumbled further as he collected himself to search for answers, to untangle the threads of this woman's life while grappling with his own. Faces of co-workers, some who wouldn't understand, swam in his mind. He could picture their judgment, the pity in their eyes. Would he lose everything he once cherished in a quest that felt so right? What compels a soldier to fight for another when he cannot save himself? Just as despair washed over him, a name floated to the surface: Crystal. It was the first clue to her story, a flickering flame of hope in his chaos. The truth behind Crystal and her struggles gnawed at him like a serrated edge. Would he dare venture deeper into a world that mirrored his own pain? With mounting tension, Mark stood at a precipice, between the fight for the innocent child and the painful truths that may redefine everything he knows about himself. Could he really reunite her with a mother he had yet to find? Every second counted, and he drew his breath to face the darkness beyond. Mark took a step back, his heart clashing with the cold air, laden with night and unresolved questions. Each breath felt thick with dread, yet within that heaviness was a spark, a dawning realization of purpose. He needed to move. If finding Crystal meant dredging through pain, then so be it. At least that pain would be focused, tangible. Unlike the hollowness that engulfed his mind, her plight was something he could engage with, confront head-on. Using the flashlight to pierce through the darkness, Mark began to search the factory floor. The frigid air stung his skin, adding urgency to each step. There was debris everywhere, remnants of a once functional place, conveyor belts frozen mid-motion, scraps of metal glimmering like lost dreams. He was hunting for answers, not only for Crystal, but for himself. In reclaiming her hope, could he reclaim his? His internal monologue tightened with resolve as he rummaged through the dusty corners of the factory. Names floated like ghosts in his mind, invoking the camaraderie and the sacrifices made in battle. The faces of his fellow Marines blinked before him, strong yet haunted by their own demons, all connected through shared burdens. He grappled with the notion that perhaps this mission wasn't solely about saving a child. Maybe reclaiming lost innocence could guide him back to his own fractured spirit. The faint whimper grew sharper as he pressed deeper into the factory's belly, handling the chaos with implicit care. Mark envisioned the child, helpless yet fierce, fighting for survival, just as he once fought to stay alive among gunfire. That bitter reminder ignited a flame. He couldn't fail her. He recalled the mission briefing from earlier in his life, where perseverance had been drilled into him. Adapt, overcome. Stumbling blocks weren't to extinguish his resolve. They were meant to challenge it. Could he channel that combat spirit into his current struggle? The answer suddenly felt clearer. As he reached a red-stained wooden door, the whimper transformed into a distinct cry, and he realized he was not just rekindling hope for the baby, but confronting what lay within him, a buried strength long dormant. With one firm push, Mark opened the door to reveal a cramped space barely illuminated by a flickering bulb. In the corner lay a makeshift crib of cardboard and fabric, and nestled within was the child, pale, fragile, and whimpering pathetically. The child's spirit tugged at his heart, reminding him that within fragility lay an intense strength. Mark's pulse quickened at her sight. It felt as if the time spent in the war, struggling against impossible odds, coalesced into this singular moment of clarity. He knelt beside her, wrapping his arms around the tiny frame and shielding it from the cold. Their connection was immediate, almost palpable, the warmth of contact melting the icy barriers he'd built around his heart. His purpose coalescing, he knew he couldn't leave without finding Crystal. He shifted into a new role, one of a protector and seeker. Mark's panic began to transform, turning into a steely determination as he plotted his next moves. Each one would uncover not just the mother, but also heal the wounds festering within himself. Facing her truth would undoubtedly mean facing his own. As he pulled his phone from his pocket to call for help, the resolve within him solidified. He was ready to confront whatever truths awaited him, both for the baby in his arms and for the man he desperately needed to rediscover. Suddenly, a shuffle echoed through the factory. Someone was approaching. Mark's pulse raced. Would this be Crystal? Or someone else? The door slammed shut behind him, locking in the desperation. The time had come to face what lay ahead. The footsteps grew louder, echoing against the industrial walls, blending with Mark's quickening heartbeat. Each sound heightened his awareness, flooding him with adrenaline. He took a breath and scanned the dim room, seeking any means of escape, though his instincts held him in place. In that moment, a powerful thought emerged. This was no longer just about Crystal or the child. He was standing at a precipice, confronting not just the threat before him, but his own fears and vulnerabilities. He tightened his grip on the baby he cradled, consciously cultivating a protective barrier between her and the encroaching darkness outside. The footsteps stopped abruptly, and he could barely make out the silhouette of a figure beyond the flickering light. His mind raced, contemplating all possibilities. Who was this person, and what confrontation would he face next? He extracted himself from the initial shock, activating the training ingrained in him from countless volatile situations. "Step out of the shadows," Mark called, his voice steady, albeit laced with underlying tension. The tranquility he attempted to project masked the turmoil churning within. "Mark?" The voice emerging from the darkness was female, tentative yet familiar. Redoubled tension washed over him. Was it Crystal? Was this the moment he had been desperately seeking? "Is that you?" he asked, stepping toward the voice. Fear and hope intermingled in him, a cocktail of emotions he hadn't allowed himself to consume since returning from war. The light flickered once more, and there she stood. Crystal. The outline of her face emerged, worn with lines that depicted her struggle and resilience. When their eyes met, an electric jolt of connection pulsed between them, igniting their shared history hidden beneath layers of pain. "My baby," she murmured, her voice breaking as she instinctively moved toward Mark, but he held the child protectively. "Please tell me she's okay." "I'm here, Crystal. She's in my arms and safe. For now," Mark said, declaring both a fact and a promise that had become essential. His resolve solidified. This was not just a reunion, it was about building a future neither of them had anticipated. This situation forced him to confront his own feelings, the unshed tears mingling with the chill of the factory air. Crystal's presence mirrored his own battles and losses, and he felt an immediate urge to understand her turmoil better. What had brought her to this point of desperation? "Where have you been? What happened?" he pressed, needing answers. Her gaze fell, shadowing the flicker of hope, with a weight of despair. The pent-up silence spoke volumes, layering their connection with unspoken stories. I lost everything," she stammered, gripping the edges of her emotional fortress. "And I thought I could save her. I was wrong." Mark's heart ached hearing her pain. He reeled back for a moment, remembering his own life, the friends he lost, the families left behind. His voice softened. "You're not alone in this. We can find a way back, for you and your daughter. But I need you to trust me." He felt the intensity of a shared existence bearing down on him. It was no longer just about rescuing her child. It was about forging a path out of the darkness, illuminating their lives anew. As she raised her eyes, he saw the flicker of determination rekindle within her. They stood at the brink of possibility. This confrontation wasn't one he could navigate without exposing raw, vulnerable truths. Suddenly, the sound of heavy footsteps re-emerged, accompanied by gruff voices. Mark's breath caught in his throat. No longer was he merely contending with his inner demons. Looming threats now bore down upon them, demanding his immediate action. "Crystal, we need to move," he whispered, urgency spiking his intention. The time to reclaim their lives was upon them, but first, survival was paramount. With threats edging closer, Mark felt a surge of clarity. This was it, the ultimate test of his fortitude. He would protect them both, but he could not do it alone. As the door rattled ominously against the wall behind him, Mark knew that embracing his new role meant delving deeper into the bonds and revelations unfolding rapidly. But would he succeed in preserving their fragile hope, or be consumed by the darkness once more? Mark's heart raced, a primal instinct kicking in as the heavy footsteps reverberated against the hard concrete floor. There wasn't time for self-doubt. Every passing second could turn opportunity into tragedy. He felt the weight of the baby against his chest, her tiny body a reminder of the innocent life he must protect at all costs. "Crystal, stay close," he commanded softly, quickly scanning the room for the best escape route. The flickering light cast long shadows, distorting the space and playing tricks on his senses. Every corner could harbor a threat, every shadow an unseen enemy. Yet through the chaos, he felt a flicker of resolve, a striking contrast to the turbulent storm of emotions swirling inside him. As Crystal moved to his side, he could tell she had been affected by the same urgency, her eyes darting as she absorbed their surroundings. But he could also see glimpses of strength hidden beneath her vulnerability. He wondered what drove that light in her eyes, kindled from the embers of their shared history. "We need to figure out where to go next," he urged, gripping her shoulder momentarily, a gesture of solidarity. "Focus on what we can control." The baby stirred, a small whimper breaking through their dire situation. Mark instinctively shifted her closer to him, feeling the heat of her tiny form contrasting sharply with the cold dread creeping over them. He thought of how significant a single life could be, how it could infuse purpose into their struggles. As night began to suffocate the factory in darkness, he knew they couldn't linger too long. The urgency propelled him to conjure a plan. "There's a service exit in the back. If we can make it." The wooden door they hadn't noticed was suddenly kicked open. A group of men filed in, faces shadowed but filled with malice. Mark's muscles coiled, instincts honed by years of service shouting for a tactical response. But this was not a battlefield. He had chosen to protect, not inflict pain. Yet his mind grappled with the necessity of violence if they were to survive. "Get behind me," he whispered to Crystal, bracing himself. Every ounce of his training surged forward. He would assess the situation, read the impending threat, and react. "Who's with the kid?" a burly man barked, eyes narrowing as his gaze shifted from Mark to Crystal. The tension swelled like an unspoken promise of violence. Mark focused inward, confronting his own fears. He was a protector, yes, but he was also a man haunted by the very memories of war that he had fought to suppress, the loss that had branded him deeply. Crystal stepped forward, her voice trembling yet resonant. "We're leaving, together. You can't keep us here." Mark was struck by her sudden determination. The metamorphosis from fear to courage mirrored his own awakening over the past few moments. He saw her true strength, willing to confront danger for her child. It sparked something inside him, igniting a fierce will to match her resolve. "Stand down. This isn't your fight," Mark interjected, placing himself between Crystal and the threat. The words seemed to hang in the air, a beacon of challenge. Time paused, and Mark's pulse roared in his ears. He was on the brink of an essential confrontation, not just with these men, but with his own understanding of power, strength, and the nature of protection. Protecting the innocent didn't always mean taking a life, but sometimes it meant risking one's own. In that moment, the trio of men exchanged unsure glances while Mark processed a revelation. He could either surrender to fear or evolve into the protector both Crystal and her child needed. The darkness surrounding their lives wasn't just external. Sometimes it lurked inside, waiting for a moment of weakness. "Mark." Crystal's voice cut through his thoughts, laced with a quiet strength. "We have to move." He recognized the urgency in her tone, fueling his resolve. There was time for introspection later. For now, they had to fight for each other and the life they held dear. Mark tightened his grip and made a decision. It was time to face the outside threat, channeling the lessons he'd learned through every battle, but this time with a heart fueled by love and commitment rather than fear. Moving as one with Crystal and her baby, he prepared for the confrontation ahead. "Let's go," he murmured, confidence rehearsed. Together they stepped closer to a future shrouded in uncertainty, but bolstered by a newfound coalition of strength. Then he caught a glimpse of the underlying fear in Crystal's eyes, and a flicker of doubt wormed its way back into his mind. Would he have the strength to protect them all when it truly mattered, or would he falter in the waves of uncertainty that threatened to crash upon them? The footsteps of impending danger echoed ever closer, and Mark realized that the moment of truth was looming on the horizon. Would he evolve into the courage he needed to embrace, or would he remain shackled by the shadows of his past? With a sudden rush, Mark launched into action, muscles taut and instincts sharpened. The men moved with a predatory grace, their intent clear, but he couldn't let fear dictate his response. His gaze flickered back to Crystal, then to the baby nestled against his chest. He could feel their fate resting in the balance of his next choices. "Together," he urged, his voice lower but steady. They advanced cautiously towards the shadows, forcing the tension into a tangible pulse. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to fight, yet the lessons of restraint weighed heavily in his mind. Angels and demons danced within him, protectors of what remained of his humanity wrestling with the primal necessity to defend by any means necessary. As the men encroached, Mark noticed their leader, the burly one, the very embodiment of menace. He stepped forward, imposing and self-assured. "I'll give you one chance to hand over the kid and walk away," he growled, the words dripping with bitterness, a challenge Mark felt viscerally. Standing tall, Mark's voice emerged, firm yet calm. "We're not going anywhere with you." Each word felt like a hammer striking a nail, sealing his resolve. His commitment to a peaceful resolution clashed with the chaotic emotions boiling beneath the surface. Crystal's breath hitched beside him, and he felt her body stiffen. It was a subtle reminder of their volatile reality. A mother frightened for her child's life next to a man grappling with his own demons. Yet he saw in her determination an echo of his own awakening. She was fighting against the very same darkness. "So let's make this easy," the burly man continued, his eyes narrowing, the threat palpable. Mark took a breath, allowing a flicker of vulnerability to surface momentarily. Was he prepared to let violence dictate the tapestry of their lives? Mark's mind spiraled, grappling with the values instilled in him by years of military service and the newfound instincts to nurture and protect. The memories of the lives he had taken flooded back, heavy with the weight of emotion. But that was not the man he wanted to be now. With every sound, every movement, he felt the burdens of the past shift, heavy yet freeing. This isn't just about survival anymore. It's a matter of what we stand for, he thought fiercely, an ember of conviction igniting deeper within him. Suddenly a noise broke through the tension, a small, muffled cry. He was startled at first, unsure of its source, before understanding it was the baby's voice. "Mama." The sound rang out, piercing the air like a siren. The burly man paused, momentarily taken aback. Mark seized the opportunity, drawing upon the instincts that had honed him into a protector. "We won't let you take her," Mark declared, a dynamic shift occurring in his stance with a newfound understanding of his own strength. "We won't let fear make our decisions." Clarity surged through him. This was not just about them. This was about defiance against a cycle of violence, an assertion of life that stood in stark opposition to the chaos pursuing them. A flicker of determination surged through Mark as he regarded Crystal. It pushed him further into the moment. He could feel her strength bolstering his resolve, confirming that his fight was not merely physical. The echoes of his past battles weren't weighed down only by memories of loss, but also by a growing resolve to change the narrative, to redefine himself from a warrior to a protector. "Now!" he commanded suddenly. Each footstep forward carved a path through the men's hesitation. Together, they dashed towards the service exit, leaving uncertainty behind. But as they neared the door, a shadow loomed large alongside them. The burly man was closing in, uncertainty replaced by sheer wrath. Mark's instincts kicked into gear, but the experience of determination coursed within him like adrenaline. This was his moment to fully embrace his evolution. Would he lead from a place of fear, or harness the poignant power of love and commitment? Just as they reached the threshold of escape, the man lunged forward, shadows merging into chaos. The scene ignited around them, and Mark clenched his jaw, realizing the stakes had escalated. The moment of truth they'd both awaited had arrived with blaring urgency. As adrenaline surged, a pivotal decision awaited him. Would he collide with the past, or leap into the future he had started to build alongside Crystal and the baby? The surge of adrenaline propelled Mark forward, instincts kicking in as he weighed the anticipated collision against the momentum of hope he felt for the lives he wanted to protect. With every step, he could almost visualize the path opening before them, illuminated by a burgeoning understanding of who he needed to become. In the chaotic blur, the burly man lunged, and Mark responded with the finesse he rarely acknowledged. He sidestepped the attack, feeling the force of the man's aggression rush past him. It wasn't just about physical agility. It was about harnessing all those years of training, years marked by discipline that now transformed into a protective spirit. The raw power surging within him wasn't the killer he had been trained to be. Instead, it was the defender he aspired to become. Crystal's eyes met his in that fraction of a second before they evaporated into a chaotic movement around them. With every pulse of danger, Mark's heart beat louder, reminding him of the stakes laid bare before them. "Keep moving," he shouted, ushering them forward as he felt the weight of their collective fear propel him. But it was deeper than mere survival. Each decision he made now resonated with a profound moral bearing. He was carving memories that would define his future. This is about protection, not just defense, he thought, breathlessly focused on the aim of the impending escape. Crystal clutched the baby closer, and the sound of the child's whimper anchored his resolve. Entering the narrow hallway, Mark's senses heightened further, but a flicker of doubt emerged. Could he truly relinquish the ghosts of his past, the battles that marked his record, the lives he'd taken? In those fleeting moments of reflection, he confronted his history head-on. The scars etched into his psyche were part of him, but with each step, they folded into a new narrative, a story where he defended rather than destroyed. As they maneuvered toward the exit, Mark glanced back. The burly man was recovering, anger twisting his features into something primal. "You can't outrun your fate, Marine," he bellowed, an echo of the dark parts of Mark he thought he'd left behind. "Maybe not," Mark replied, voice resonating with newfound strength. "But I can choose how I face it." Each stride felt more empowering than the last, like breaking free from chains that had long held him captive. The lessons of survival are changing, he mused, briefly scanning his surroundings, seeking anything he could utilize to shield them. What had once seemed an oath of violence was now evolving into one of protective cooperation. Splitting thoughts between facing forward and glancing back, he devised a plan. Mark grabbed a nearby trash can, cornered against the wall, and in a calculated but impulsive moment, he hurled it toward the burly man. It redirected the man's attention, slowing him down just enough. "Go!" he urged again, adrenaline surging through his veins, propelling him into unyielding action. With his eyes fixed on the final goal, Mark shouted, "Don't look back, we are getting out." Crystal's nod was a bolstering affirmation, their unity a beacon against despair. Their feet rang out against the concrete, resounding louder than the chaos chasing them. Each step felt like a reclamation of who he was, and at the core what he was meant to become. Yet deep within him, a looming question remained. Was the man they left behind just a reflection of a part of himself he couldn't discard? The momentum of their escape began to feel like a catalyst, igniting the need to confront not just the external chaos, but also the internal battle within him. As they hurtled toward what he hoped would be safety, Mark wrestled with the undeniable truth that change was never simple. The clamor behind them faded into white noise, yet the shadows of his past loomed heavy in his heart. The harder he fought to protect the future, the more he feared the cost of confronting his own demons. Suddenly, just as they neared the final threshold, a scream erupted, a chilling penetration into their brief moment of hope. Mark turned to face the sound, dread coiling in his stomach. Someone was still in danger. Would he run toward that voice and risk it all, or would he take the chance to preserve what he'd fought so hard to protect? The tension thickened, and the choice crackled in the air. Mark's heart plummeted at the sound, a cry destabilizing the fragile ground he'd anchored himself on. The decision surged before him, a primordial clash between instinct and intention. Crystal's grip tightened upon the baby's small body, her expression a storm of fear and disbelief. The burden of choice clawed at Mark, each heartbeat amplifying the weight of the moment. He could feel the air around him crackling with urgency. The walls seemed infused with tension. "We can't leave them," his voice quavered, teetering between self-doubt and burgeoning valor. "There's someone in trouble." The instinct to protect reached out, and in that split second, the conflict within him surged to the forefront. The realization gripped him. This was more than a desperate escape. It was his reckoning. Was he merely a protector, or something more profound, able to save not just the innocent in front of him, but also exorcise the demons inside? "Mark, we need to go." Crystal's voice broke through, each word echoing his familiar fears. Preservation of the present versus the potential sacrifice of the future. "Trust me," he whispered back, that simple phrase weighted with a promise of determination. He pivoted on his heel, rerouting his energy toward the scream, that desperate call for help igniting a fire within. Each step was both a retreat from his former self and a forward momentum toward realization. He had the skills honed from years of combat. He could navigate the chaos without getting lost in his past. As he broke into the next room, he saw her, a young mother pinned beneath debris, fear etched on her face. "Help!" she gasped, desperation mingling with despair. Mark's heart seized, recognizing the fragility of her life in stark contrast to the strength he had cultivated. He dashed forward, his mind shifting gears into problem-solving mode, the Marine's training transfusing into a different form of action. He assessed the situation quickly. The wreckage looked daunting, but the training he had once regarded only as lethal force now became a tool for rescue. "Hold on!" Mark shouted, steadying himself as he began to dislodge the rubble. Each stone pulled away felt like a release from the shackles of his past, each motion intertwined with the hope of redefining his future. With every ounce of strength, he focused solely on her, blocking out the chaos that echoed in his mind. "You're going to be okay. I promise," he said, his voice steadying under the weight of commitment he had embraced. The sincerity in his words sparked a light in the mother's eyes, a flicker of hope that ignited his determination even further. As he finally cleared a path, she crawled out slowly, relief flooding her features. An unexpected bond forged through a shared moment of desperation. But before they could dash to safety, a loud crash resounded behind them, the burly figure appearing from the shadows, a dark cloud of aggression and danger. "Let's go," he urged the mother toward the exit, a fresh, terrifying resolve coiling around him. The looming figure was not just a threat. He represented all the violent memories lodged in Mark's mind. "You won't take any more lives," he shouted, a primal roar against the echo of his past self. The air thickened with tension as Mark felt the truth bloom within him. He wasn't just fighting for survival, he was fighting for transformation. A surge of strength coursed through him. This was his moment to choose the path of protector, not predator. But as he readied for confrontation, the crushing realization dawned. Could he truly face the man who embodied everything he had fought against inside? Time slowed, the decision weighing heavily as the world around them swirled into chaos. "Move!" he shouted at the mother, pushing her toward safety. For Mark, it was no longer just about escaping. It was about confronting all that he feared. As the burly man advanced, Mark squared his shoulders, facing not just an enemy but a reckoning with his own choices. "Here we go." His voice was steadier than it had ever been. The moment of truth arrived, and he stood thrumming with the awareness that every action, every choice mattered. In that charged instant, Mark prepared to confront not just the monster before him, but also the fractured remnants within. But as the distance closed, a chilling realization echoed in his mind. Would this battle finally liberate him, or further tether him to the violence he sought to escape? The ground shook beneath Mark as he braced himself for confrontation. The burly figure advanced with an ominous gait, each step a reminder of the past he had so diligently tried to escape. This was not just a man. This was a manifestation of all his fears, a dark specter embodying the chaos he had fought against in his own life. Mark's instincts screamed at him to run, to take Crystal and the mother to safety, to hoist them above the impending danger. But the fierceness inside him ignited, allowing him to tap into what he had always been, a protector. As adrenaline coursed through his veins, he found clarity amidst the turmoil. This wasn't merely about the physical battle. It was about reclaiming the agency he had surrendered so many years ago. "Stay back," he called out, his voice resonating with an authority that surprised even him. The mother hesitated, concern flooding her features as she glanced nervously between Mark and the advancing threat, but he felt a resolve wash over him. He locked eyes with her, imparting a silent message of safety. "Go with Crystal," he instructed, gratitude for her presence hardening his spine. "I'll handle this." Crystal's grip relaxed around the baby, her expression filled with uncertainty, but she nodded, sensing the steel in his voice. As she urged the mother toward the exit, Mark stood firm, heart pounding in anticipation. With every heartbeat, doubt threatened to reclaim him. Could he convince himself that he was not that drone commanded by fear? Would he succumb to the primal instinct to fight, just as he had in years past? Fear-born rage surged within him, urging him to retaliate against his own insecurities. But as he crafted a mental blueprint for defense, he understood that this fight extended far beyond a single enemy. This confrontation mirrored his inner struggles, the violent past that shadowed every step he took. He had to confront that just as much as he had to confront the man before him. "Are you ready?" he muttered to himself, recognizing that the honest truth was deeper than physical strength. This was a battle for awareness, for personal evolution. In those fleeting moments of clarity, he realized that he didn't need to be shackled to his violent memories or previous identities. With focused intention, he strategized how to strategically outmaneuver his opponent. The burly figure lunged forward, a whirlwind of muscle and fury. Mark sidestepped with calculated precision, his combat training kicking into high gear. He felt a wave of pride take root. This was what he was trained for, but now it served a deeper purpose, the defense of life instead of destruction. In a swift motion he countered, channeling the very strength that had once plunged him into darkness now into a force of protection. As they grappled, Mark's thoughts moved fluidly. He was no longer just an operator on a battlefield, but a man reclaiming his narrative. Each movement was a statement to the ghosts that haunted him. He was not destined to repeat history. The fight escalated, but with each strike, a piece of his old self detached, allowing his evolving self to step into the realm of possibility. As he pinned his opponent to the ground, voices of his past clashed with the clarity of the present. Perhaps liberation was at hand not just in physical form, but also within his core values. Victory didn't feel like a triumph over the burly figure. It was a submission of his former self, a relinquishing of a life governed by violence. "I am not that man," he whispered fiercely, the weight of the realization resonating in the stillness that followed the chaos. And yet, even as he stood triumphantly over the subdued threat, he felt the tremors of uncertainty beneath his armor. Would this transformation withstand the test of true freedom, or was it merely a fleeting moment? Questions loomed thick in the air as he turned to check on Crystal and the mother. But the look of sheer disbelief on their faces, mingled with concern for his safety, sent shivers down his spine. Would they see the truth of his change? Mark's heart raced with the knowledge that while he had fought an external foe, the most profound battles always awaited within. As an echo of a distant cry pierced the silence, Mark's determination renewed. This was just the beginning of an unexpected journey, a path not just to save others, but to save himself. What remained unaddressed bubbled beneath the surface. How would he maintain this newfound resolve against the shadows that threatened to emerge anew? The fight for self was far from over. Mark stood there, breathless yet invigorated, the fading echoes of conflict still dancing in his mind. The realization that he had not just defended the vulnerable but transformed in the process seeped into the gaps of his uncertainty. He wanted to convey that this victory was more than a single encounter, yet doubt threaded through his thoughts like an unwelcome guest. Could moments of courage hold ground against the tides of insecurity that had swept him away for so long? Crystal's voice broke through the haze. "Mark, are you okay?" Her eyes shimmered, reflecting both relief and anxiety. He turned to her, the gravity of the moment pressing down on his chest. Their connection was deeper than he had recognized. It was a lifeline to a fresh start. "I'm all right," he assured her, though the tremors in his hands betrayed him. The burly figure lay motionless, but his body was still alive with adrenaline and echoes of a past he was desperate to outrun. "Did you see what you just did?" Crystal took a step closer, her voice lending hope to the shaky ground beneath him. "You stood your ground against him. You protected us. That's..." Her words carried the weight of belief, igniting a flicker of something within him. Protection wasn't simply a role, it was a promise to himself as well. "I faced something bigger than him," he confessed quietly, glancing around as if the walls could absorb his truth. "I faced who I used to be." Crystal studied him keenly, and Mark sensed the real challenge ahead. It wasn't merely about the fight he had just won, but forging a new identity. That path loomed vast and uncharted, filled with potential and yet heavily laden with the possibility of failure. What if today marked another transformation, only for it to unravel in the face of old demons? Holding the baby tightly, Crystal shifted, her brow furrowed. "What now? Are you going to be okay?" Her concern sliced deep, revealing an understandable fear that resonated with his own unvoiced ones. He was a protector, yes, But how long would that hold until the shadows flooded back in? Mark's heart ached with the weight of potential disappointment, but he inwardly steeled his resolve. "I need to figure out how to not just fight," he replied, steeling himself with the conviction of uncharted territory. "There's a future to build, not just a battle to win." The air felt thick, almost electric with the resonance of his statement. As they stepped outside, the daylight washed over them, revealing a canvas where fear could either surface once more or dissolve amidst the promise of the unknown. As they reached the car, Mark's mind whirled, sketching plans for every moment moving forward. He envisioned therapy, groups where stories were shared rather than battles fought, resilience learned not through violence, but through vulnerability. Here lay a territory less fiercely guarded, yet no less demanding. Each choice could expand the breadth of his capacity to change or retract at the first sign of through a frail connection to a past too easy to revisit. "Let's start fresh," he said, staring at the road ahead. A spark ignited within him as he grasped the key to his future, not only the fight against a physical threat, but also the conquest of his internal narrative. It was about reaching out, not clenching his fists. Mark inhaled deeply, tasting the sweet tang of potential anguish alongside the thrill of possibility. But what if it's harder than I think? What if those shadows can't be outrun? The fear whispered, lurking behind his newfound determination, steady if unyielding. A sound broke through his thoughts, a chiming reminder that dependencies could be as fragile as glass. The baby's soft cry echoed in the cleft of uncertainty and resolved spirit. As he turned to Crystal, their eyes locked, an unspoken agreement settled between them. It was time to confront what lay ahead together, step by step. Mark understood the fight was just beginning, and the urge to retreat tickled at the back of his mind. But today was not just a defense, it could become a bridge to a new identity. The moment stretched, suffused with a resolve reinforced by the fear he grappled with. And yet, even as his resolve solidified, a ripple of doubt stirred anew. What would happen when his past called once more? As the road contorted ahead, Mark felt it, an old familiarity creeping close. The choices lay bare. The journey of transformation awaited him, unpredictable but undeniably his own. Would he bend or break under the weight of those shadows lurking just out of reach? The next steps would tell a story yet unwritten, a decisive stride toward freedom or back to chains born from within. Each heartbeat resonated loudly with one lingering question. What would he become in his quest for self-discovery? And would he find the voice to answer when the time came? Mark Thompson stepped away from the chaos behind him, his breath slow and steady under the increasingly bright sun. The factory, now far behind, represented not just a battle fought, but a crucial chapter in his ongoing evolution. He felt lighter, as if hidden weights had begun to lift, the burdens of his past slowly giving way to the promise of a renewed purpose. As he settled into the passenger seat of the car, he turned to Crystal, her determination still palpable. "We did it," he said, a muted thrill coursing through his veins. Her steadfast courage had ignited something powerful within him, something he never thought he'd rediscover. Today wasn't just about survival, it was about reclaiming his identity against the backdrop of a tumultuous history. Crystal nodded, her baby nestled protectively in her arms. "I can't believe you stood up to him like that. You were amazing," she remarked, her appreciative tone igniting a flicker of pride deep within Mark. Her recognition reaffirmed his commitment to the peaceful path he had chosen. "I had to," he replied, his voice steady. "It was no longer about fighting for myself. It was about protecting others." The realization wrapped around him like a warm embrace. It was a shift from a mentality of destruction to one of resilience. No longer would he allow his past to dictate his future. He took a breath, feeling the crisp air fill his lungs, and allowed himself to bask in the belief he had once thought unreachable. He knew now it was not merely what he achieved in battle that mattered, but what he could create moving forward. Reflecting on their narrow escape, his thoughts wandered toward the future, toward building a new life not just for Crystal and her baby, but for himself. The weight of responsibility that had once felt suffocating now morphed into a compass guiding him toward the healing he so desperately sought. "Mark?" Crystal's voice snapped him from his thoughts, concern weaving through her words. "What are we going to do now?" His heart raced with possibility, and he felt the edges of uncertainty fade away. "I want to help you and your daughter find a home, a safe place to start over," he resolved, his voice resonating with a newfound clarity. "And for me, I need to confront my past, find help to process everything. There are support groups, people who understand." She looked at him, something like admiration shining in her eyes. "I'd like that. I really want us to heal." "Together," he affirmed, their shared understanding a solid foundation to build something profound. In facing their fears together, they could create a sanctuary. No longer would he walk this path alone, and that realization emboldened him. As they began driving away from the remnants of their former lives, Mark gripped the steering wheel, each rotation a sign of his commitment to the journey ahead. They passed through the familiar streets cloaked in sunlight, a stark contrast to the dark shadows of the past. He recognized that challenges would arise, familiar echoes of doubt and fear might creep back in. But he was ready. He would now approach these struggles with tools acquired not through battle, but through understanding. Months passed, and Mark carved out a space in the community, volunteering at a local veterans center while supporting Crystal as she found her footing. He developed programs focused on connection and camaraderie, offering veterans a safe haven to share their struggles, an echo of the support and unity he had so craved upon returning home. His reputation began to shift. Friends and neighbors noted his transformation from soldier to community advocate. He stood among those he once feared would judge him, earning respect not through confrontation, but through genuine compassion and resilience. At an open forum, he watched Crystal step forward to share her journey, her voice ringing clear and true. She spoke of hardship, love, and survival, and he felt pride swell within him. He understood now. Support was not just about saving lives, but empowering each other to rise. With her, he was healing too. Healing from the oppressive ghosts that had once haunted him. The solidarity between them deepened and opened avenues he had never considered. As their lives intertwined, Mark found himself at home with both his vulnerability and his strength. They fostered connections not just for their healing, but grew as advocates for community support. He realized that fulfillment came not from erasing pain, but from integrating it into a narrative of hope and healing. One evening, as they watched the sunset together, he turned to her. "Thank you for believing I could change. You helped light the way," he said, sincerity coating his words like a protective layer. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mark. You stood up when it mattered," Crystal replied, glancing at him. There was warmth in her gaze, recognition of a bond forged through pain, strength, and transformation. In that moment, Mark understood his metamorphosis wasn't just about themselves. It was about the possibilities of connection, community, and the capacity to grow. He had conquered not just the darkness of an external foe, but also the internal demons that had held him hostage. As they stood cloaked in the golden light of dusk, Mark grasped the depth of what he had achieved. It was the culmination of growth, clarity, and connection. A profound personal triumph. This was his new adventure. He embraced it wholeheartedly. The shadows would always linger, but through collaboration, resilience, and transformation, the future sparkled with hope. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It matters more than you know. Comment your reactions and theories about this ending. We're eager to hear your thoughts. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now and show you're a true fan of personal overcoming stories. Don't wait even one more second to share. Let's spread the message of transformation together.